what's going on? The Cheap Card Collector here, and today we have a special video. One video that I've wanted to do for a very long time. It's Sports Cards 101. It's the basics. People always ask me, "Oh, hey, Sports Cards is back," or "Hey, it's a thing now. How is it? What's different? I want to get back into it. What do I need to know?" So this video is really the basics, what I've learned over the past couple of years back into the hobby, just to help newbies sort of understand how things are and how to get back into it. So hopefully this is a useful video and one that you can come back to for reference because I think it's very important to know the basics before you jump in and spend your hard-earned money. It's currently June of 2023. Lot can change. I may have to do an update video very soon, but as of now, this is where things stand. So let's jump right in. If you like what you see, like the video, subscribe to the channel. We love making new content, and we appreciate your support. All right. So what's new? So unfortunately, I'm going to start right off and say it. Most of your cards that you use to collect are probably worthless. If you're like me, I collected during the junk wax era, which I'll talk about, from 1987 to 1994, and most of those cards are not worth anything, with a very few exceptions. But before I jump into why, let's talk about the different eras of sports cards. So we have what we call vintage, and again, these dates are a little fluid depending on who you ask, but generally these are the understood different eras. Vintage are anything pre-1980, so we're talking about Mickey Mantle, Babe Ruth, 50s, 60s, 70s, Honus Wagner cards from the early 21st century, vintage, right, old stuff. A lot of stuff that's not worth anything, but a lot of obviously very valuable things. If you find some good vintage cards, you're set for life. Um, Modern vintage, which is between vintage and the junk wax era. Um, there's some cards here that are worth something. The print runs, things start to get a little junk waxy around 84, but that's sort of the modern vintage area. There's some good cards. Obviously, 1986 is the famous Flair basketball set. Michael Jordan rookie, Charles Barkley, Karl Malone, iconic. So 88 and 86 is considered modern vintage, kind of that gray area. I explained the junk wax era. The reason why it's called the junk wax era is because back in the day, everyone collected cards. There are card shops everywhere, and they printed, called print runs. They printed millions, rumored to be millions of cards of each card. So if you talk about supply and demand, there was just a ton of supply. And to this day, you could buy boxes of these cards, warehouse fulls for pennies on the dollar. So there are a few exceptions in the junk wax era. Cards that they printed a ton of but are still valuable, or for whatever reason they didn't print a lot of. The 1989 Upper Deck King Jeffrey Jr. rookie card, um, iconic card. They printed a ton, but the demand is always there. Topps Finest, the Shaq year, Beam Team, very low print runs on that. Um, the Jeter SP 94 card, they don't have a lot of those. So there are a few exceptions of sets with valuable rookie cards and other cards they didn't print, but generally, like all your Michael Jordan cards, probably worth a buck. Um, Unfortunately, that's reality. That's the first thing people realize when they come back to the hobby. They say, "Hey, what's this worth?" And everyone says, "Unfortunately, nothing." So that's the junk wax era. Now, after that, in the modern era, sports cards kind of came down, right? You haven't heard of sports cards probably for 20 years after that. That's the called modern era. So a lot of these cards, lower print runs, so there are a lot of good, valuable cards here. Things like the Mike Trout rookie in 2012, Verlander, baseball. Just rookie cards that are good players that they didn't print a lot of. Kobe in 96, his card 96, 97 are very valuable. So there are a lot of valuable cards within the modern era, but again, also a lot of cards that are worthless. And now we come to the ultra modern. So this is sort of where we are today. Print runs are back up, nowhere near what they were for the junk wax. I think I probably estimate at maybe the highest print run sets maybe 25% of what the junk wax era at the peak. So not as bad, but ton of sets. And there's just what we call the junk slab era, which I'll get to, but that's what people think we're headed. So it's sort of interesting, kind of between the junk wax and the modern. I think that's where we are today, and we'll see where we go. So that's just an overview of the different eras, so you can understand, in general, what your types of cards, your common cards, your non-exceptions would be worth. So another thing that's new, so real-time market, right? So back in the day, if you remember, you had the Beckett magazine would tell you how much your card is worth. And I remember buying the Beckett monthly magazine and being excited to see if my card went up. That's just some magazine telling you what a card is worth. Obviously, What I didn't know as a kid was your car is only worth what someone's willing to pay, just like in the stock market. You have a stock, someone you want to sell it, there's a buyer. Now, sports cards is very similar. With eBay, you can look at sales of cards in real time, thousands of sales, purchases and sales. And so you can see price movement. So you can see what the demand is today. You can see it if a player hits a home run or wins a Super Bowl, it spike up. You can actually have real data to look at value. So in a sense, it becomes more of an investment versus a hobby, which we'll get to later. So that's a key difference now than it was back, pre-internet. So now is actually a good time to start collecting and investing in cards. Why? I'll give you an example. So what you see on the screen here, this is talking about real-time data. This is a Luka Doncic rookie card. It's a silver prism rookie. It's one of the more valuable base card rookies he has. And I picked this card, but you could pick any card from the past couple years. So you'll see the value of this card today at PSA 10. So this is like a gem mint rookie. And I'll explain what PSA 10 means. Sold for $1,500 yesterday or a couple days ago. If you see that spike in the middle, that is the pandemic. That is 2020, 2021. People were at home, couldn't go out, had money to spend, had time. Everyone got into sports cards, flippers, crypto people, just collectors. Everyone came in and inflated all the prices. So this card is worth probably $10,000, if not maybe more, at the peak of COVID. And now it's back down. Now sort of everyone's left that was coming in for a quick buck. You're left with the true collectors. And so now you see the line below or before COVID, the card was worth a little bit, went up, now it's back down. So if you are getting back to sports cards now, someone could tell you, well, yeah, but cards are going back down to where they were pre-pandemic. It's possible. But I do think that there's enough people in the hobby this time around than there were before to maintain the levels, if not exceed them. So we'll get into values and how to pick cards, but if you're getting into the car market now, as you can see by this chart, it's not a bad time. If you got in 2021, not a great time. So timing is probably good for you. So the company, so if you remember in the Junk Wax era, you had Topps, you had Donruss, you had Fleer, for baseball, eventually Upper Deck, maybe NBA, you had Hoops, you had Skybox, you had like 5 or 6 sets per sport. It's a little different now. So the players today currently main players are Panini Topps. Panini has exclusive licensing to the NBA and NFL Players Association. So if you want an NFL or NBA card of a player with a team and all the information, everything, fully licensed, only Panini makes basketball and football cards. Topps has license to the baseball cards. Upper Deck hockey and Leaf doesn't have anything. They sort of make their own thing. Now, that doesn't mean you can't buy a Panini baseball card. They do make a lot of baseball cards, but it would say Mike Trout, Los Angeles, with no team logo, no Angels anywhere. So it's sort of like maybe like a white jersey that just says Los Angeles. So obviously not as valuable, but still nice cards, still valuable cards, but they're not licensed. So if you want the licensed cards, Panini for basketball and football, Topps for baseball, Upper Deck for hockey. Now that said, Fanatics back in April just acquired the rights to those 3, baseball, football, and basketball from the Players Association. So now Fanatics is going to make those cards soon. How they make the cards, what brands they use, are they going to try to acquire Topps, Panini, and make the same sets that we all know? Who knows? No one knows really. And that's why I said we may have to make this video again very soon. But Fanatics now will own the rights. So starting next year, we're going to start to see Fanatics cards. How they look, who knows? But the bottom line is there's a lot of different, these are different players currently, and there's some other small ones as well. So sets, I mentioned there's like 7 or 8 sets back in the Junk Wax era. Right now, there's a lot. So just an example, for baseball alone, there are 141 2022 sets of baseball. 141. And I wanted to show what that looks like. So it's essentially, when I say a set, these are some of the sets for baseball. Each one has 300 to 500 cards, their inserts, whatever. 122 of them. So you got Bowman on the left, very popular with the prospecting. And I mentioned Panini at the bottom right. They make baseball cards. They're not licensed, but they still make them with the player and the city. And then you have the Topps, all the different Topps products for baseball. Topps Archive, Topps Chrome, the flagship. But then even you see on the right, so many different versions of Topps Chrome. Um, it keeps going. Finest, you remember Topps Finest, Topps Heritage, Topps Holiday, Topps Now, and then Stadium Club. Stadium Club's still around, so they kept a lot of their old brands. So the bottom line is there's a lot of sets, and football and basketball are the same thing. So there are hundreds of different sets per year of sports cards that they keep churning out. It can be very overwhelming. The other thing to add on top of that are what they have called parallels or numbered cards. So within each set, take any card, take a Justin Verlander. There are 20 to 30 different versions of that same card, but a different color. They call it parallel. So you have the base card, then the red, the purple, the green, the blue, the Independence Day, the Father's Day. Um, some of those are numbered. So what that means, if they're serial numbered, they're out of 99. So like maybe the Independence Day has 99 of that card, and you can pull like 5 of 99 or 7 of 99, but there are only 99 ever made. Um, so if you look at this, this is an example of Top Series 1 2022 baseball. There are only, I'm surprised I thought it'd be more, there are only 18 parallels of each card. So some of them are not numbered, like on the left, purple, gold, royal blue, rainbow foil. So that means there's a lot of them. But if you look on the right, some of those, like the Mother's Day hot pink, there's only 50 of them ever made. So if you pull one, it's going to be numbered, 13 out of 50, 22 out of 50. So a lot more valuable. People pay more for the lower serial cards because there are less of them. And then on the bottom, you see the coveted one of ones. So that means there's only one platinum of each card made or a printing plate. Those are very valuable. I've only pulled one ever. It wasn't a great one of one, but still sold for a decent amount because it's a one of one. Now that said, if you think about there are 100 sets and each one has a one of one, some have a few one of ones, there's still 100 one of ones a year. So it's not like it is one, but still very valuable. So just on top of over 100 sets, 20 to 30 different parallels within the set, hundreds of cards, right? So we want, if someone asks you, what's the Julio Rodriguez rookie card? Well, there's 500 of them. Pick one. Versus Michael Jordan, everyone says 86 Fleer. Good and bad with it, obviously. The good is more opportunity to get rookie cards. You can go get a Julio Rodriguez rookie card for $1 and say, I have a rookie card. Whereas, back then you couldn't get a Jordan rookie. But of course, it's not worth much because there's many. So that's a big difference with the parallels and the number cards. Um, Grading. Now, you may see cards in slabs and plastic slabs. They're called graded cards. Um, so what that is, and I have a picture here. Um, these are just some of the slab cards I own. So they're protected in a casing, and they're graded 1 to 10. And there are different companies that do the grading. So on the top, that red and white label, that's PSA. That's probably the most common or popular grading company, and the cards are worth the most. On the bottom left, there's that blue one, that Curry is ISA. There's maybe 100 or so grading companies that are sort of like special companies, like startup companies trying to break into the grading market. So you'll see all these random slabs of companies that you've never heard of, but the four big ones are PSA, Beckett, same Beckett that you know a lot from the Junk Wax era, SGC, and CSG. For those of you who know comic books, CSG has been around for a while. So those are the four companies that typically you get cards graded. It's about anywhere from $10 to $30 to maybe $100 a card to submit to get graded. Back during the pandemic when demand was high, it would cost hundreds of dollars, but now it's sort of come back down. So you can get your card graded for two reasons. One, protect it. It's encapsulated in the casing. But also two, if it gets a good grade, that's worth more. And on the right, I just have an average example of a table here, just to show how valuable PSA is. So if you took an average card and you got submitted to PSA and it got a 10, gem mint 10, like the Nikhil Alexander Walker and the De'Aaron Fox on my screen, it's worth $200. If you look below that, that's the value of the other graded companies of that same card. So what's the bottom line? PSA cards are worth the most. Now, if you look at the label, there's nothing special about it. I'd argue it's actually one of the worst. But PSA is it's people pay for. It's what's worth the most. So I would say use SGC, BGS, or CSG if you like the slab, if you're doing it for your own collection. But if you're doing it to sell, it's PSA. And before the PSA pricing, the grade was so expensive, it maybe made sense to go to SGC or BGS or CSG. Now they're all the same. So now it doesn't really make sense. And then the last thing I'll mention on the bottom right, you see that It's a raw card. So if I just buy the card ungraded, say it's $20, a nine, which is pretty good. Nine's like a kind of near mint, as you see with the Cam Johnson pink camo. Um, a PSA 9 is pretty good, but it's almost the same cost as a raw. Why is that? Well, people want the 10, right? So if you submit a card and you get a 9, chances are it may not be worth much more than the raw card because there's so many of them, right? People want the 10. So submitting cards to be graded for value is hard because you never really know what you're going to get. Um, there's no AI being used for the big companies. It's very subjective. Did the grader have a good day, a good morning? Did they eat a good breakfast? Sure, they'll give you more 10s. It's sometimes very challenging and frustrating when you get cards back, your grades get. But bottom line is you cannot ever think you have a 10, no matter how good the card looks. So there's a lot of nines. Sometimes you're a collector, get nines, get eights or sevens. People don't want those, but the 10s are, you're going to pay a premium. So that just give you a layer of grading. It's completely changed the game. It's also added some value to some of the vintage cards, or sorry, the junk wax cards, like that Steve Young on the bottom right. 7.5 is not worth much, but at a 10, suddenly you could have a junk wax card that's worth a lot because the very few 10s, right? The cards are damaged, they're off-centered, the surface got scratched up in your garage. So 10s of any card potentially are good. Now, I mentioned the junk slab era. That's because everyone got everything slabbed. If you look at the top right, the Nikhil Alexander Walker, it's a 10. That card's probably worth $5, if that. So there are slabs of junk cards, common cards everywhere. Pre-pandemic, it was even cheaper than this today. So you'll see a lot of worthless slabs, or even that Curry in the bottom. I mean, ISA, they're an up-and-coming company, but there's no value there. So be careful, but this sort of has changed the game for the better, or in some cases for the worse. Boxes. So back in the day, if you want to get cards, you go to your card shop and you buy a pack or a box. There are different products now. So you can do the same thing. You can go to your local hobby store or online and get a hobby box. Hobby boxes are typically bigger. They're very expensive, anywhere from two to 500 to 1,000, even $50,000 for special sets. But they'll come with guaranteed autos, special cards you can't get elsewhere. So hobby boxes are very expensive, but probably the best place to get the best cards. Mega and blaster boxes. So those are retail boxes. So you go to Target, Walmart, Target online, um, dollar stores, whatever. They'll sell cards, the same sets, like a $30 box, or a jumbo pack or a solo pack, which is like one pack for $15. So you can get that at any retail store. During COVID, it was impossible to find. Now, you go to any Target, they're everywhere. So they're cheaper. You can still pull autos, can still pull one-on-ones, but the majority of the big hits will be in hobby. That said, if you don't want to spend $500 on a hobby box and probably not make your money back, you want to spend $30 on a blaster box and just have fun, that's the way to go. So many different products, boxes that you can buy cards in. Breaking. So you've probably seen or heard of this now. What is a breaker? So a breaker is someone who will online, either YouTube or whatnot, or any another streaming platform, Twitch. They will sell a box or sell a case of cards to people who want to buy into the break. And that person online will open the cards on video, and whoever bought into that break gets those cards, and then they ship them to you. So it's sort of a buy a product online, watch them open it, and then they ship it to you. You can buy, there's very different types of breaks. You can buy into a pick your team. So maybe they'll say a case of 2022 basketball optic, buy a team, and any card from that team you get. And obviously, the more important teams or valuable teams in the set are cost more. You have a pick your player. Like, so if it's the big tops case set, you pick Mike Trout, Shohei Ohtani, Clayton Kershaw, you get all those cards that you pull. There's also random. So you just buy into the break, you get a random team, you get a random player. And there's pick your division. There's different variations, and there's a lot of breakers out there. Less so than there were 2 years ago, but it's a fun way to sort of interact. Open a box of cards when you're at home from anywhere. A lot of breakers do this a lot, so you don't have to worry about them not sending you the cards. They're trusted. So that's fun. It's along with the boxes, it's very hard to make your money back. Like you could buy a $30 box or buy a $50 into a break. You rarely ever make your money back. So I think you should treat those as gambling. It's like you go to the casino, maybe you win, but you probably lose. It's the same with buying boxes, and it's the same with breaking. It's fun, it's entertainment. You'll get some cards, probably won't make your money back, and you have to accept that. We'll talk about value later. So that's breaking. And then finally, as anything else in life, social media. There's a lot of influencers, personalities that have channels, kind of like mine, but more eyes. They're a little more marketable, more production. That's their job. And they talk about this card or that card or the hobby. Where is it going? So obviously that influences a lot of things. Like if you ever watch a popular channel and they say Walker Bueller is hot right now, suddenly you see a spike in Walker Bueller cards. I mean, it is what it is. It kind of makes it fun, but just keep it in mind that, like anything else in life, social media is obviously influencing the card market. So where to buy? So we mentioned where to buy cards a little bit. Card shows. So those still are around. They're actually probably more frequent than they were 5 years ago. There's the National Card Show, which is the big annual card show convention. It moves around each year. It's in Chicago this year. There's last year was in Atlantic City, but there's also card shows in every city often. So you can go to card shows just like you did back in the junk wax era or when you were a kid. Local card shops, again, those exist. There's more than there were 5 years ago, not as much as during the pandemic, but there are definitely a lot more local card shops. Again, this is where you can buy hobby boxes as well as singles. Garage sales. So if you ever watch certain channels, people go to garage sales and buy boxes and stacks of cards, either from the junk wax era or modern or whatever. Good way to just to build cards in your collection. And if you like, bargain hunting, you could always find that one card that they forgot about that's in the pile. So garage sales, pretty cool place to go as well. eBay, probably, in my opinion, the best place to buy cards or sell cards because you just have access to all the people. There's thousands and thousands of cards, and as I mentioned, you can check the market on them. But eBay is where you can get cards, you can make offers. Probably the place where I, buy 90% of my cards. Um, Social media, as I mentioned, so Facebook, Twitter, Instagram groups, there are pages and groups that sell cards. They'll say, hey, I'm selling this card, anyone interested? And I've bought a lot of cards from Facebook and Twitter. There are groups that have thousands of followers that people vouch for. You can pay via PayPal or Venmo with purchase protection. So if they rip you off, you get your money back. You got to pay a little fee. So there are ways to do this correctly. I mean, scammers are out there, so it's very difficult. But oftentimes, this is where you get the best deals. People wanting to get rid of their stuff, they don't want to pay the fee in eBay because, and we'll talk about fees later. eBay fees are not cheap. So that's another good place to buy stuff. As I mentioned, always pay with purchase protection, always. And as I mentioned, retail stores. So even Rite Aid, they've got cards, packs, boxes, exclusive. They used to have Target exclusive sets, different parallels. Barnes and Nobles, probably in my view, from my area at least, always has cards. So you can go around these stores if you just want a pack, a box, you want to rip something. It's easy to find now. And then other websites, there's a ton of them. Sportslots.com, see my slab. Just have slab cards, common cards. Beckett Marketplace is still around. They still sell things. I've bought them. And then PWCC and Golden are like the really expensive $1,000 cards. So there are many places to buy and sell cards. No shortage of that. All right. So just general tips. And I think this is probably the most important page of the video. Stick to a budget, right? If you think about it, all these sets, all these parallels, all these players, year after year, it gets overwhelming, right? You need to set a budget and stick to it. What I like to do is I have a budget, but if I can sell cards that I had, then I can use that to buy more cards. And that's often what people happen is trying to grow their collection. But when you're starting out, stick to a budget because if you don't, you can get carried away. And I've seen people on social media, whether they're being truthful or not, who've said I've let it get out of hand. So stick to a budget, and you'll be fine. What's your plan? So you hear collector, you hear investor. There's a difference, right? Collectors are just people who want to buy cards and put in their collection, like collecting anything else, whether it be comics or video games or collecting, I don't know, stamps. You buy them, you add them to your collection. So if you're collecting, then it's worth what it's worth to you. If you're investing, then you want to buy cards in the hopes of selling them later for profit. Or you could do both. But the key is you need to figure out a plan. If you buy a card, what is the intent of that purchase? Is this card for my collection? I'm going to put it in a box and never sell it. Or is this a card that I think I'm going to try to sell later for more? There's no wrong answer. That's the fun part about the hobby. Do what you want, but you have to know what your plan is. Do your research. So, as I mentioned with eBay, there's also 130point.com, which shows you sales from all the different websites. Card Ladder is also a good site too. Do your research. Look at the trends. Look at how much this card was worth, how much a similar card was worth. If a player won a Super Bowl, a quarterback won a Super Bowl, and you want to see what did past Super Bowl winning quarterback prices do after they won it, you can look at that. There's just so much information like the stock market. Do your research. If you're collecting, it doesn't really matter. But if you're investing, you wouldn't buy a stock without researching the company, looking at the financial statements. It's the same thing with cards. So do your research, and you'll perform better. This is an interesting one. So player performance doesn't equal value. So oftentimes you have a player who wins a Super Bowl. Let's say Aaron Donald when the Rams won the Super Bowl, for example. He won a Super Bowl. He dominated. I think he won MVP, or maybe he didn't. Cards did nothing, right? A lot of the sports card market is speculation. You'll find people will spend a ton of money on a backup quarterback versus a Hall of Famer from 20 years ago. People just don't care, right? It's all about hype. It's about energy. So just because a player does well, it does not mean their cards will do well. Some cards or some players, the prices already assume that they're going to win 10 Super Bowls. So if they win the Super Bowl, nothing happens to the card value. They got to win nine more. So unfortunately, that's the way it is. But just keep that in mind. The other thing too, on that note, certain types of players are more valuable. So if you think about football, quarterbacks, it's all about the quarterbacks. Running backs, receivers, and obviously offensive linemen, card prices are low. People just don't care about them. Part of the reason is QBs play a longer time, 15, 20 years, so there's continuity. Running backs, as you know today, 5 years in, they're already downhill, so you don't really have time to get to know them. But it's all about the quarterback. People pay for a third stringer that maybe could get like a Cooper Rush, maybe get a start, and speculate versus Randy Moss. It's just the way it is. It's all about the quarterback. Now, you could find value in running backs and receivers and DBs. I mean, there's definitely value there, but all the attention, all the money, for better or for worse, it's all about the quarterback. In basketball, it's all about the wings, the scorers, the guards, LeBrons, Kobe, Curry, big men. Now, that said, there's not a lot of big men today, but Shaq, even like Giannis and Jokic, um, the value is not really there. It is, but it just people don't care about big men. They want the Lukas, they want the Trae Youngs when he played against the Knicks. It's all about the scorers and the flashy guards. And then baseball, it's about home run hitters, it's about energy. Pitchers, it's far cheaper than power hitters, power shortstops, speed guys. It's all about home runs and power and flash. So no matter how well a pitcher does, like I collect Clayton Kershaw cards, and they're not cheap, but compared to some of the average hitters who could be good, there's no comparison there, or in fact, there is a comparison. They're very similar. Pitchers generally don't draw. So the point is, in every sport, it's a little different, but you need to know the type of players that people like, and it may help you determine what you treat as a collector and as an investor and where you spend your money. This is an important one, and for the good of the hobby, I'm going to talk about it. Don't buy cards right away when the new products are released because when a new set comes out, everyone wants cards, and so they sell. You could have a card of a rookie that comes out, and right when it comes out, you'll see it on eBay sold for $5, $10. A month later, those cards are selling for a buck, $1, because no one cares, right? They've settled in, the market's kind of settled now, they're onto the new set. So if you get that card early on, I would say sell it because the demand will never be higher, generally, and then it goes down. So unless it's a card or a player you think is going to become something later that they're not now, don't buy right away. Take a deep breath, even lag a set behind, and buy those cards. The only exception is if your goal is to buy cards and grade them right away and be the first to market with the tens and nines. Then you want to get the card right away, grade them, get them back, and be the first one to have a 10 on the market. So you could do that. It's tricky. And again, it relies on you pulling the cards, which, as I talked about, very difficult to do. So I would not recommend it. But generally, wait a bit. Let demand settle down. Another very important piece of information is sports cycles. So when in the year are you buying sports? Certain times of the year, depending on when the season is, cards are up, cards are down, right? So generally, you want to buy in the preseason. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I should actually say sell in the preseason. The reason is, excuse me. The reason is before the preseason, everyone's hyped up all the players, right? So if you take it's June, football's in about 2 months. Aaron Rodgers, Desmond Ryder, all the up and coming Kenny Pickett. Everyone's buying them in anticipation of the season. So prices are up. So if you have those cards, you should sell them now. You should try not to buy them. It's tempting because you want to get ready for the season, but everyone wants to buy them. So prices go up. So really in preseason, you should, again, they should say sell in the preseason. Uh, and then I actually got this mixed up. Buy after the start. Because after the season starts, unless they go nuts, prices come down. It seems counterintuitive, but if everyone's buying Kenny Pickett and this first game he wins 280 yards and 2 touchdowns, great game, but he's not a Hall of Famer, it comes down. That's when you buy. So very few exceptions. Like last year, Justin Jefferson went nuts the first couple games. Jalen Hurts went. No one expected that. Those two guys shot up at the start. But short of that, everyone else either went down or kind of leveled off. So you shouldn't. You should, if you want a card, you should wait until the season starts. If you don't think they're going to explode in some fluky game, then you buy it after the season starts. Um, and then sell during the playoffs, which is I did get that right. Jokic during the Denver run, cards went up, right? His cards, rookie cards went up, very high, so you should sell them because then they come crashing down after the season. Matthew Stafford's a good example. When the Rams won, his cards shot up the week he won a Super Bowl. After that, they came crashing down. So you should sell during the playoffs and buy in the offseason because no one cares right after the season's over. So depending on the season, depending on the sport, think about what time of the year, because chances are if you want to buy something, everyone else does too. So pivot the other way, right? Basketball just ended. No one cares about basketball anymore. Everyone's wrapping up for football. It's baseball season. Everyone's buying Shohei Ohtani. So if they're zigging, you zag. So that's just something to think about. Fees. Now, if you're thinking about investing, there's a lot of fees, right? eBay charges around 13% when you sell anything. There's shipping, right? There's mailing, there's insurance, there's costs of materials, sleeves and whatever. That's not so bad. But selling cars, there's a fee. So if you're gonna invest, it's just like when you trade stock, right? You get trading commissions and all that. Think about the fees; they add up. They have to be part of your bottom line because if you buy a $5 card and you ship for $5, that's all your money right there, right? So think about fees, something that people don't give much attention to. Selling fees, shipping fees, also taxes. I'm not going to give you tax advice, but just be mindful of the tax rules for selling. Um, and most importantly, have fun. The hobby is supposed to be fun, even if you're investing, right? If you love sports, if you love collecting, have fun. Because if you don't have fun and treat this as a job, it just becomes a grind. And it can be very overwhelming with all the sets, with the market, you have money involved. Have fun. The key is, as I talked about, a plan. What does fun mean to you, right? If you have fun trying to find cards to grade, if you have fun just buying your favorite player, trying to collect them all, or you try to do a rainbow, right? We talk about parallels. You want the Shohei Ohtani rainbow. You want every parallel of a set of that card, and you're trying to collect it. And you scour the internet for it. That's fine too. So whatever you care about, set it and have fun. So that's the video. I may do a couple more talking about grading some specialty things, but that's the basics of card collecting in 2023. I love it. I hope you get into it. And I really hope you enjoy this video. Please refer to this presentation if you ever want to reference any information we talked about. Leave it know in the comments if you think there's something else that you disagree with, something I should have missed, you think is important. Would be happy to hear it. But otherwise, like the video, subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much, and take care.